Jenkins back with you here to talk about a couple of they're kind of like inverse operations that you can use in AutoCAD, and I think it's important to understand how they work because it also helps you to understand how AutoCAD thinks about the shapes that you're drawing. The two commands we're going to talk about today are explode and join. Just as a helpful reminder, when you need to type in a command, you can kind of at any point just start typing in what you want the command to be, and it'll give you a pop-up menu of choices that sound like that. Generally, you type in those commands down here, but you can kind of just type them in anywhere. But the two commands that we're going to talk about today are explode and join. And so, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, if I make a rectangle, doesn't matter anything, I'm not going to care about the dimensions, anything like that. I make a rectangle. AutoCAD thinks of these four lines, it thinks of that as one object. Okay? Doesn't think of them as four separate lines. You can adjust it however you want, but it thinks of it as it thinks of it as one object instead of four separate lines. And so if I do, for instance, if I wanted to do an offset, right, I could say offset distance of, I don't know, 3, I have no idea how big this thing is, but if I do an offset, it offsets the whole thing. All four lines get offset to the inside or to the outside because it thinks of it as one object. Okay. But there are going to be times when you make a rectangle, but you want AutoCAD to be able to think of it as four separate lines. And it's really easy to make that happen. Okay. If you just kind of highlight the whole thing in a selection box, and down here you just type in the word explode and hit enter, AutoCAD now thinks of this as four separate lines. So you can see if I just click on one thing, it only highlights one thing instead of one of those four lines instead of all four. So now if I did an offset, whatever the offset distance I want is, and I hit boom, it's only going to offset the one line. Okay. And so it's helpful to understand that that's how AutoCAD thinks of shapes as you draw them. If I had instead drawn this as 1, 2, 3, 4 separate lines when I originally made it, AutoCAD would think of it as four separate lines, but that's not what I did, right? I just typed in rectangle, and so it made it in one rectangle. Now, say you have the reverse thing that you want to do. You have 4 separate, 10 separate, 20 separate objects, and you want AutoCAD to think of them as one object again, right? So again, if you make a selection or object and you select all the things you want to join together, you select them, all of them are selected, and then you just type in the word join, hit enter, and it tells you 4 objects are now converted into one polyline. So again, now when I click on it, AutoCAD thinks of this as one object instead of 4 separate lines. So again, when I do my offset, pick my object, offset, 4, click. I made it a bigger offset this time. It's 18 for some reason. Anyway, click again. Let's do offset. Specify the distance. We're going to go 4 and make it bigger. So that's how AutoCAD thinks of objects. If you draw it as a polygon, it'll think of it as one object. If you draw it as separate lines, it'll think of it as separate elements of your drawing that you can apply different modifications to as you want to. And again, to take one object and convert it into its separate pieces so that AutoCAD thinks of those things as separate elements, you just select those things and hit explode. And if you want to join them, you select all the things you want to join, and you just type in the word join, enter, and then it'll join them as one thing. All right, everybody. Hope that's helpful. Have a great day.